He enjoys history, theology, and exercising. He's the Vice President of the National Honor Society, Senior Class Vice President, a Lieutenant Colonel and Battalion Commander of the JROTC, member of the Rifle Marksmanship Team, and Captain of the Raider Team. He's already been accepted to the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, and is currently applying to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. Sean?
Before I start today, I've been given the opportunity through my high school career to shake the hands of hundreds of veterans, to see the faces that have bore war. So before I start, I'd like to thank all the veterans in this room for giving me the opportunity to write and to tell this speech. Thank you. I'd like to start my speech with a quote, and it reads like this. If you are on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. And in that case, the man who turns back soonest is the most progressive man. The great theologian and critically acclaimed writer C.S. Lewis said this over half a century ago, shortly after the Great War that some of these men have fought in. He wrote this in his book, Mere Christianity, concerning man's propensity for and gravitation towards sin. I believe Lewis's statement is more than applicable to contemporary American decline and degradation. Because, folks, we are on the wrong road. Currently, we are a nation of various peoples, separated and characterized by our ideals. Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other, conservatives and liberals. As of late, trends indicate that one ideal has gained momentum by way of political control and teachings of moral relativity. And that ideal is progressivism. These self-proclaimed crusaders for progress devote their time to pushing America into constant change and still insist that it is good. They refuse to acknowledge the pleas of the working class and instead assert that they are advocating this change for the quote-unquote silent majority. Which leads me to pose a question. Why is the majority still so silent? And the answer is deafeningly simple. It is because they do not exist. They are figments of greedy, power-hungry imaginations that need a cause to rally behind, and a sympathetic one at that, hence the term silent majority. It's as if this group is fearful to speak up and requires representation. Our country will not pull itself out of the pit of self-loathing and regret it currently resides in unless we can reach a consensus regarding these false teachings. We must acknowledge our folly as a people, grow a sense of integrity, and fight to influence true change and true progress, because we are the majority. We must not accept the lies of postmodern thought hidden under the guises of equality and cute campaign slogans, because, friends, progressivism is change that we can't believe in. To weed out progressivism and pull it up by its invasive roots, we have to fight it on all grounds. Initially, we must starve these dogmas by cutting off their supply chain financially. Bleeding heart supporters of progressivism constantly assert that wealth redistribution will benefit our country in a myriad of ways. Well, I have news for false teachers. America didn't become the global leader that it is today through large-scale wealth redistribution. The United States became the land of the free and the home of the brave through the use of a capitalist economy, one that allows for free enterprise and entrepreneurship to grow. We, as the United States, must come together to combat this lie, perpetuating the welfare for votes system that the progressives so smugly take advantage of. This is where I challenge each and every one of you to remember, they are counting on us to give up our right to vote for money and empty promises. And that means a lot, considering that many of us are now of legal age to vote. Once we begin to beat back the economic aspects of progressivism, attacking it on philosophical grounds shall yield even more results for freedom. The vast majority of state colleges and universities have taken on strictly liberal personas. They enforce their leftist exclusivity through expulsion and termination of any faculty or students that refuse to conform to the school's own set of twisted morals. For example, Barry University in Miami even went as far as to verbally endorse funding a pro-ISIS club, then quickly suspended the senior student for publicizing the endorsement. When we begin to become this student and to speak out publicly against the illicit indoctrination of our youth in school, we will win this war on philosophical grounds. We have become so complacent that we are tolerating restrictions on the prayer, the Bible, and on free speech, not just in college, but in state-funded high schools as well. Instead of advocating the sound moral doctrines of peace and love, some schools are choosing to instead teach the 4 pillars of Islam and are requiring students to recite the Islamic conversion prayer, "There is no God but Allah." Ironically, this occurred in what used to be the heart of the Bible Belt, Maury County, Tennessee. And to my critics, we can all appreciate a lesson in culture, but that is certainly not what this was. Because, as I said before, the progressive movement is doing this under the cloaks of equality and tolerance, but as of October, the Tennessee state-funded school has yet to give lessons about Judeo-Christian principles. This is the epitome of a paradox of intolerance. This, my friends, is where we are the weakest. It is if we have given up the battle for this nation's young, impressionable minds, and have handed them over to hypocrites and false witnesses. Lastly, is the universal ground that we must stake our claim upon, and those grounds are that of the geopolitical sphere. For the last decade, we have been oblivious of what our elected officials have been doing in Washington, D.C. They attach riders and secret clauses to bills that otherwise seem harmless. Take the notorious Affordable Care Act, for example, which was supposed to bring inexpensive health care and medical benefits to the populace of America, but instead was unreadable until passed. How that is just and reasonable, I can't understand. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is quoted as saying, "We have to pass the bill before you can see what's in it." I would like to bid a thank you to the Honorable Ms. Pelosi for raising our healthcare premiums while delaying our doctor's appointments. If we can get our argument across to the elected officials in Congress, the rest of our pieces will fall into place, and we will gain the traction that we've been so desperately praying for. We require new, polar opposite leadership that would lead the nation against the headwinds of geopolitics rather than simply letting the world dictate our course. We need leaders with courage, with depth, and with reason. Moreover, this country requires steadfastness that hasn't been witnessed since the likes of Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan. I would argue that we cling to the images of these leaders not because they were perfect, not because they were infallible, but because they were steadfast. Roosevelt saw the need for a trust buster, and Reagan our need for a man of military might. So they became the very things that our country desperately needed, and they always stuck to their guns. If we continue to hand over our elections to crooked and morally deprived politicians, we are bound to continue in this state of decline. That is the simple and undeniable truth. We must heed the warnings against the tyranny that our forefathers so adamantly told us about. And this is your call to action and your call to vote, young and old. I challenge you to preserve the country for your posterity, just as our ancestors did for us. We must not falter, and we must not fail in this endeavor. For if we do, the America of tomorrow will be unrecognizable when compared to the America of freedom and patriotism that we hold in such high regard. On this Veterans Day, we gather to honor those that have so gallantly answered the call of duty to protect this land from all enemies, mind you, both foreign and domestic. They gave their very lives for the cause that I am speaking of. Now their baton has been passed on, their saber laid down. They have given us the opportunity to pick up their instruments of liberty and press on. I only hope that we can be so brave as to continue their fight. This is my vision for America. Thank you.